Remember that really good storyline TNA had going with Kurt Angle working his way through the top 10 ranked heavyweights to earn a shot at the world title? That storyline that seemed like the perfect way to build up to Kurt Angle getting his shot at the title at Bound for Glory? Well, apparently the writers have decided to throw that storyline out so they can roll with a very hastily thrown together tournament instead. Never mind the fact that the Kurt Angle storyline already had momentum and 2 months of build-up behind it. Never mind the fact that no matter how this tournament plays out, it will not be as good or mean nearly as much as that storyline did, because it's going to climax at TNA's biggest show of the year in a match that will only have about 1 month of build-up. Then there's the participants. We know that the Bound for Glory World Title match is going to feature some combination of Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy, the Pope, and Ken Anderson. All right. In theory, that's not the worst thing ever, but I have a few concerns. Number one, all 4 of these guys are babyfaces. So between now and Bound for Glory, someone's got to turn heel, and they need to turn heel in the worst way possible. And looking at this group, there's really only one candidate for that, and that's Ken Anderson. The problem is he has no reason or motivation to turn heel right now, because his character's whole direction over the last several months has been about changing his ways and becoming a good guy, so it would make no sense to turn him heel. And aside from turning someone heel, the only other option would be to do the 2 babyfaces who respect each other and want to find out who's the best storyline, but they just did that with AJ and Sting at Bound for Glory last year. Number 2, this match is going to be set at No Surrender, which means the writers are only going to have 1 month to build the Bound for Glory main event between 2 guys who will either have little or no history, will have history but have since patched up their differences, or will have history but not enough credibility to headline Bound for Glory against each other. So any way this plays out, this match is not going to have nearly as much momentum as it should, which leads me to number 3, and this is the big one. This was obviously something that the writers threw together at the last minute when their original plans fell through, because with the way the storylines have played out over the last few months, there's really only 2 matches that would be fitting of the main event of Bound for Glory at this point. Kurt Angle versus RVD, or Kurt Angle versus Abyss. Yes, I said last week that Rob Van Dam's title reign had been boring and had no momentum, but he was a credible champion, he had been very strongly booked, and with Bound for Glory less than 2 months away, it was really too late to take the belt off him unless you were going to give it to Abyss, who, love it or hate it, is TNA's top heel, and the only heel on the roster with enough momentum and credibility to headline Bound for Glory right now. On the one hand, they could have gone the route of Kurt Angle working his way up through the top 10 heavyweights for months, which puts him on a collision course with Rob Van Dam, and ultimately leads him to finally challenging the longtime champion in a huge dream match. Or on the other hand, they could have gone the route of the Monster Abyss, destroying the longtime champion, injuring him so severely that he had to vacate the championship. This dangerous, violent lunatic who obliterated everyone in his path in his efforts to capture the World Heavyweight title, and now there's only one person left. The last man standing, the only man who could possibly have any hope of stopping Abyss's path of destruction, Kurt Angle. But instead of that, we could be getting Kurt Angle versus the Pope for the world title with 1 month of build-up. Do you see the problem here? I don't know about you, but I see a big damn problem. Because between these 4 guys, there is no matchup the writers can make that would mean anywhere near as much as Kurt Angle versus Rob Van Dam or Kurt Angle versus Abyss. Anyway, there's my thoughts on that. So how was Impact? Well, not a great show by any means, but more enjoyable than the show they put on last week, a show that I really soured on in retrospect. At least this week we saw the Motor City Machine Guns and Jen Mee having a great match, and no Tommy Dreamer in the main event this time. Yeah, the main event wasn't as good as it should have been, but at least all the guys in that match belong there. And while I'm on the subject of Tommy Dreamer, I've got to say this EV2 thing is rapidly running out of steam. Clearly there was some type of interest in it at first, and the ratings reflected that, but I think that interest peaked at Hardcore Justice, because if you saw that pay-per-view, you know that with a couple exceptions, those guys were very quickly exposed as being well past their primes and not being able to perform nearly as well as they could back in that company they were all celebrating. And TNA are trying to push these guys against a group of young, rising stars in fortune, and it just doesn't work. You can't buy into it. It's ridiculous. So when Tommy asks which one of these guys wants to take out Abyss, and Stevie Richards volunteered, I just facepalmed. I mean, when Stevie and Abyss were brawling backstage, you couldn't even take it seriously. Has Stevie Richards won a single match in TNA? That's not sarcasm, I'm honestly not sure. And we're supposed to believe that it takes Abyss longer than 10 seconds to completely steamroll this guy? I mean, put Rhino in there and it makes a little more sense. But this whole feud is asking us to suspend our disbelief too far because there's very little mileage in it to begin with. I mean, Fortune gains nothing by beating EV2, and if they lose to EV2, they look like chumps. So, if the EV2 thing is not even drawing ratings like it was before Hardcore Justice, then what's the point of doing this? I really don't know. Hell, this show just illustrated why Fortune should not be feuding with those guys. They had this really good opening segment with Flair hitting on Dixie. God bless Ric Flair, man. He's the only guy who could get away with that. And then Fortune beat up Dixie's husband and everything. And then out comes Hogan with Kurt Angle, Ken Anderson, the Pope, and Jeff Hardy to stop them. That right there made Fortune look like a bigger deal than this whole EV2O angle up to this point. That's who these guys should be feuding with. They should be feuding with the top stars. Elsewhere on the show, we had to suffer through a slow, plodding match with Jeff Jarrett trying desperately to carry Kevin Nash in the ring, and try as he might, he just couldn't do it. Then Sting appeared, and there was more crap with him. I can't believe they still have not explained why Sting turned heel, why he aligned with Nash, why he's doing all this stuff. It's been months now. I officially do not care anymore. I don't care if there's meaning behind Sting's actions. I just want him to go away and send Nash with him. I don't care anymore. Now, the stuff before the match with Jeff Jarrett and Samoa Joe, that was alright. Good to see Samoa Joe back from his suspension. Also good to see that the writers are finally getting his character right. He's not a face, he's not a heel, he's just a badass who's out for himself. That's good. That's Joe's character. Unfortunately, since Fourth Dimension Fool Killer's making me talk about this shit again, before we got to that, Joe had to work a match with Orlando Jordan. The match was pretty short and Joe controlled most of it. Jordan got some sleep-inducing offense in the middle, but mostly Joe squashed his no-talent ass, thank God. But this is getting ridiculous now. This Orlando Jordan character is getting worse. I didn't think that was possible, but it is getting worse. Every single time he shows up, it gets worse. He's basically committing sexual assault on SoCal Val when he comes out to the ring. You know, because he's bisexual. And bisexual people, they do that stuff. So we should all boo bisexual people because they're bad people. They're deviants, man. They're sexually depraved. I hate this character. I absolutely hate it. I know Bischoff loves controversy, but this is controversial for all the wrong reasons. They're playing up the worst, most offensive kind of stereotypes just to get cheap heat, and it's freaking putrid. I'm offended as a straight person. There's no way this should be on television. This is exactly why I was refusing to watch Jordan's segments until this one showed up. Because he's horrible. He is horrible. He's not even a good wrestler either. He sucks. Everything about him is awful. That's all I got for this week. I don't know when the rest of the Q&A is going to be done yet. I'm still working on it, but it might be a little while. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys later.